I'm Michael Weber, Artistic Director of Chicago's Porchlight Music Theater. Welcome to the Movie Musical Monday podcast. This series of recorded conversations explores all our favorite film musicals, from Broadway adaptations to Hollywood originals, as our rotating host and guest conversationalists open a discussion in which you are invited to participate. Today's movie musical is the 2007 film adaptation of the 2002 Broadway production Hairspray, itself a musicalization of John Waters' original 1988 movie. Today's host is Porchlight Production and Operations Director Alex Rhyan, with guests Lillian Castillo, who has played Tracy Turnblad at the Phoenix Theatre, Arkansas Rep, and the Drury Lane Theatre, and Faye Butler, who's played Motormouth Maybelle both at the Paramount and Marriott theaters. Let's go to the conversation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I want to give Faye and Lillian the opportunity to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they think of the movie before we get the conversation going. And I'm excited that we're here talking about Hairspray. So Lillian, do you want to start us off? I know Michael already did a great intro about what what roles you played and everything, but why don't you just kind of kick off the conversation?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Hi. My name is Lillian Castillo. I played Tracy Turnblad 3 times. And it was one of the best things in my life. I really loved it. I am not a huge fan of the movie. I want to go on the record as saying I'm always happy when they turn musicals into movies, because I really want to expand the fan base of the medium to people who maybe don't go to theater that often. Maybe that'll draw them to come see those shows live, because there's nothing like it, right? There are just a number of things about the movie that I don't love. But before I go into that, I'm going to let Faye introduce herself real quick. Hey, Faye.
Well, thank you, Pumpkin. Well, they picked a really sad group today when they got you, because I don't like the movie either.
I know.
I guess it's because I don't know. It's because I remember the original version, and there's some characters in it that I don't know. I remember the original version, and it sticks with me. Maybe that's a bad thing. I thought it was a little bit, even though it was still set in the same time period, it had too much polish on it for me. And the thing that I like about Hairspray is there is an earthiness and a realness to it, no matter what side you stand on, about race, relations, and even the music. The sound of the music was it was a little bit too slick for me. When I saw the 2007 version.
So when you're talking about the original, are you talking about original John Waters version?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that really resonated with me when I saw the musical, first. And I've seen it so many times that I love that. When I saw 2007, I was like, man, that was not one you had to redo.
Yeah. There's a grittiness that's missing, right?
There's something that I don't know what that is. And I just say it's a slickness that just kind of makes me go, okay. You know what it is? For me, the thing about it is, when I saw it originally, I believed that Tracy was Tracy. Mm-hmm. I believed that Edna was Edna. Mm-hmm. When I see 2007, I believe Michelle Pfeiffer is, John Travolta is, Queen Latifah is, not necessarily Motormouth is Motormouth. If you know what I'm saying as artists when I say that.
I think so.
Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying we've started quite a conversation here and going back and forth on your guys' thoughts on the movie. I would like to open it up to other people's takes on it, and if they agree or disagree. We got Austin Packard.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is the first Hairspray I ever saw, so this is the one that I compare all other Hairsprays to. So I still kind of love the movie. I will say a big part of it, though. It's weird just the level of star power they put into it, of just how many recognizable celebrities. And you're right, you do just kind of see them as the celebrities playing characters, not as the characters. But I really enjoy it, but I think a big part of that is because this is how I was introduced to it.
What about Frankie? I know you had your hand up.
It's so funny. I will admit, in 2007, my tiny little queer self saw this movie in theaters 10 times. I thought it was the most important movie musical of my time, and I was like retroactively entered into the Hairspray world because I thought it was just I was laughing so hard and it was so beautiful and whatnot. But then when I finally worked backwards to the John Waters film, I went, whoa, we lost the entire point of this story by getting to 2007. Is that like you said perfectly, there's an earthiness, there's a grittiness that's gone. And I just rewatched Your Timeless to Me before this all started because I was like, oh, I must have skipped that when I was watching it. And I said I was only laughing at that because it was Christopher Walken and John Travolta. I was not laughing because I saw this beautiful couple like having a moment together. I was laughing because they turned it into a laughing moment. So across the board, it was a piece of theater or a movie musical that meant a lot to me. But after even just 5 years, and now that it's been a decade old, it's lost a little bit of its magic, which is really hard. But when you can admit that, it makes it a more powerful conversation.
I was going to say, I mean, rewatching it now, one of the things that they did with the movie that I was like, I don't love that, is that they cut that everybody goes to jail. And some people do that even with the live action musical. They'll cut out that big dollhouse number, which I'm just like, no. The reality is like these people were going to jail. These protesters going to jail. Protesters are going to jail today. This is not in the movie, Tracy runs away, which I could have, they could have done something with that where, there's people who mean well, who show up and then they get scared and they run away. And they could have addressed that in some way. If you're going to change that in the movie, maybe you can address that particular topic. But she runs away and they never address that sort of thing. So why cut out the reality of these people going to jail?
And I love that number, Dollhouse, for many reasons.
Me too.
It kind of reminds me of Hey Big Spender, the kind of girls number like that. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of the number in Chicago, when they're in the jail. It kind of reminds me of those kind of classic musical numbers that the women have in musicals at that time where they just stop and these women are in jail and they sing about it. And some of it is real and honest, and some of it is kind of, shocking. The reality of it, and how they get out of it. All of those things to me are part of what made that rich when you do the Dollhouse number, because it says a lot, because there are relationships that are formed in that number that we kind of lose when, like you say, you just take it away. You miss kind of some of the bonding that the women do that were were at odds before they went to jail. So I kind of miss that a little bit when I'm watching, 07. So.
Yeah, and they also brought on the screenwriter to bring down the campiness, as they called it, from the staged version, and I don't know what you guys feel about that. I mean, there's still some very comedic moments, even in the editing of, the fireworks going off during the Welcome to the 60s or the shooting stars and the billboards coming to life and, her picture coming to life. But they wanted to bring, less comedic campiness, corny things to it.
And I thought it was really campy. I guess I missed that part that they were trying to pull out. Because it kind of that's what it was, kind of felt like to me. So I must have missed that part.
The thing about Hairspray, and for me, was like, campiness. This is sometimes a bitter pill for people to take when they're forced to look at their history, right? And that campiness covers that bitter pill in a sugary coating, which sometimes makes it easier for people to swallow. And yes, it is a sugary coating, and yes, we're soft serving it up. But sometimes soft serving it is the only way that people take something in. So I think that they underestimate the gift that campiness is or this particular show?
I think, to your point, Alex, I think that when the people making the movie talked about removing the campiness, that's a code switch for we didn't want the movie to look too gay. And I think that really personified by the fact that they had such a straight man play Edna. John Travolta as a woman can't be threatening to middle America because it's Danny Zuko in a dress. It's not Harvey Fierstein. It's not Divine, and that to me, although I love a lot of the movie, that to me was a loss, was that they took the particular gay sensibility out of it. And while I think Ife and Lillian are right, there are still a lot of campy moments to it. None of those campy moments veer into something super gay.
Yeah, I also have an opinion about that. So it's always interesting to me when I watch a movie that takes out the campiness. When I think about that, sometimes because it's television, I feel like they're doing it because they're trying to make light of the situation, make it a joyful moment when it's really serious. Perfect example is, on the opposite perspective, I think is Scottsboro Boys, and the reason why they made it so raw and why it has the campiness in it. Because the reality of what it was and what the real struggle is, I think, and I might be contradicting myself a little, I think sometimes in television, they think that that's the great way to put the message through, which sometimes they just need to be honest and raw with it. I kind of experienced that when I was working on that project. I don't know how anybody else thinks about it, but I think that television and film in general does that with true stories and things that people really don't want to have true conversations about. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but
I absolutely agree with you, Chris. I know I was fortunate to do it twice. And I tell you, my first experience was not a good experience with Hairspray because, and I've had this conversation with many people and they've asked me about it because I did it at the Marriott Lincolnshire. And we know that's the North Shore suburbs. And I don't know if they actually took a really good look at that show before they decided to do it. Really? Because as we got into it and as they began to develop the scenes, I found that the artistic staff was not really ready for a lot of the things that Tracy had to do or her girlfriend. They weren't ready for those scenes. They weren't ready for the scenes, between the Black and the white couple falling in love. They weren't ready for that. And so there were lots of restrictions put on us. And it was kind of weird at the time doing that play. And I said this to the powers that be. I said, I don't even know why you chose this, because you're now putting restrictions on the very thing that this piece speaks to, that we're fighting for every day. That people can love whomever they want to love, whatever package they come in, It's about live and let live, and it's about bringing people together. But yet and still, you don't want them to kiss on stage. What is your best friend's name? What's the character's best friend? What is
Penny.
Penny. You don't want Penny to kiss a Black boy on stage because your audience is uncomfortable. Well, they should be uncomfortable if that's what they live in their wheelhouse. You know what I'm saying? I think that's okay. Maybe they'll question some things. You don't really want to see two men kiss because it's kind of weird. Well, no, he's an actor performing with another actor. You don't really want a lot of the things, anything that might push against anything that would make someone uncomfortable, which is the reason we're in the state as a country right now that we're in. Because when anybody feels uncomfortable, we say, stop, take it out. Let's make everybody happy, And it's why we are where we are right now today, is because we have to constantly go back and revisit these things. The second time I did it, I was so pleased and happy that artistic staff said, you know what? We're out here in the suburbs of Aurora, and if people get nervous, that's good. Maybe they'll go home and question themselves. Theater's supposed to invoke conversation. Things that we do are supposed to make you think. It's supposed to continue. You don't have to agree with everything that happens on stage or what happens in a film, but at least it invokes the kind of conversations we're having right now. And so having those two vastly different experiences, it was quite a unique time with me for the simple fact that I didn't know if I wanted to do it a second time because I didn't want to come across that because it kind of made me bitter a little bit.
I feel like I had that in reverse. I feel like I had two really great experiences. And like while working with the people that I worked with in my third experience, which was Drury Lane, was really amazing. There were some glaring problems as far as whether or not production was ready to take on, whether the theater was ready to take on the show. I think one of the biggest things, and we spoke. So we get to the very end of the show, and the show, the Corny Carlins show, becomes integrated, right? At that point in my first two productions, Black boys were dancing with white girls, and white boys were dancing with Black girls. In my last production here, at first, she brought all of the Black kids on with the white kids, and there was still separation. And so we said something about it, separation as in all the white couples were in the front and all the Black girls, we were like, no. So we said something about it, and her solution was to mix up the couples, but not split them up. Do you know what I mean? So Black was still dancing with Black, and white was still dancing with white, except for Penny and Seaweed, and that is a problem.
And because I was in that production, it was one of those things where I think some of us physically just switched partners. We ended up, I don't know if you remember this.
I do remember.
Just were like, well, we still have to tell the story. And we would literally find ourselves waving across the stage to other people when we should be, what the message is at the end, we're all one. We all bleed the same blood, we all should come together. We're all part of the same world, accept who you are, love who you want to love, whatever it may be. And you know what, Lillian? Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and it was, and that was in that production in particular, and Chris could speak to it if you want to, was from the beginning, as far as rehearsals, riddled with problems of, I don't know about, I can only speak to, I felt like the rehearsal process was segregated. And like the way that the show is set up, it can happen within a rehearsal process where you're just working with the Black kids or just working with the white kids. And so your cast ends up getting segregated. But I had not experienced that in my first two iterations. But with this one, there wasn't an attention to that there should have been. And so I felt like the cast ended up being segregated, and not only in the space, but in the time that was put into the Nicest Kids scenes versus the Motormouth scenes. Like it was a problem. So
I respect the concept of him, like, this is how it was, blah blah blah. But we literally did not see the white cast until 2 days before tech. But now we know going forward, next time we do it.
Well, I know that I'll never get to do this show again. This show is for a number of reasons. Reason number one is I am not white. I am a fair skinned. I know, surprise. I am a fair skinned Latina person. And because of that, you put a wig on me and you put me far away from people, and they're like, oh, that's a white girl, and so I will not be auditioning for this show ever again. B, I'm also too old, but but going forward in the future, if I see this show, I want to be able to see what it's supposed to be in its full integrated beauty,
This is a very important and pivotal conversation to be having, especially with today's climate. I want to open it up. I know there's lots of people that want to jump in here. Frankie, you had your hand up a while ago. Do you still have comments?
It's okay. I would pay money to watch them all debate it anyway. But the two things that I was remembering is that what I think the 2007 version lacked out of all of them, minus the Waters because it wasn't musicalized, was that we lose Velma's revenge. which I think is such an important number because the audience at this point has been laughing at the villain. And she says some god-awful lines in that number that even Kristen Chenoweth in the live version still made me, clench myself. And I've seen this musical countless times. And I think that in and of itself is the perfect example of why the 2007 movie was a bigger conversation about weight and not as big of a conversation about racism, is that we lose the racist villain's big number. It was a reprise, but she says some god-awful racist things in that number. And so that's one takeaway if anyone wants to jump off of that. And the second thing I saw, and I'll have to find the link of the article and share it and whatnot, is that someone also made an excellent point about Hairspray as an enterprise in general. And I always also feel this about the movie, is that the 80s version, the protest, and so does the live and stage version, so it's not completely accurate, is that the protest is in the middle of the show. And then we spend the whole second half of the show recovering from the protest and the arrest and whatnot all the way to You Can't Stop the Beat. But the 2007 version essentially pushes the protest to the 11 o'clock number, which I think slightly distorts everything and puts the show at a weird caterwampus and whatnot because we put so much of the racial story in the last 15 minutes of the musical. But more importantly is I know where I've been, no matter what version you're looking at it, is that I'm blanking on the name, so you'll have to excuse me, I'll find the article in a minute, is that what's fascinating about Hairspray is we've spent so much time with Tracy's perspective and the white ally perspective about all of these characters, especially the 2007 movie, that when we get to I Know Where I've Been, is that we hear her say that, but we don't know who Motormouth Maybelle actually is, And so the characterization of these Black characters is still reduced down to almost a prop in this musical.
You have to bond with your cast when you're playing Motormouth, because if you don't have a reason, an impetus to do that song, because that's a song that is a civil rights moving forward, strength, power. I'm here for you, all of you. It doesn't matter whether you're my child or not. I will protect you. It is what the civil rights movement was built on, that we will care. And sometimes it gets thrown away by the first number you see Motormouth done, and the wigs and the outfits and the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I know I worked very hard at making sure that one scene, because you only got one scene before you do that number, that it really was still as possible and focused so that we had a chance to take it in, as small as it is. But that's something you have to fight for. And I agree with you. That's something that they missed totally in the film. Totally missed it. Because when it all is said and done, you can lose weight, but you can't lose color. You just can't lose that. It's going to be with you forever.
Yeah.
You can lose weight, you can get pretty, you can put a wig on, but you can't lose your color. And I think sometimes productions gloss over that because they don't want to, let's not get heavy. Just sing the big song and let's move on. And
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's an anecdote where I Know Where I've Been was almost cut from the Broadway production.
I know.
And it just and thankfully Shaman and Whitman fought for that. Is that the producer said, no, this is not what this. It's like, no, this is what this musical is about. Is it really what Hairspray is about? Is a different debate in terms of how it's written. But if we would have lost that, all power that musical has would have been out the window.
I absolutely agree with you 500%.
Me too.
I'm the granddaughter of Chuck and Diane. So thanks for having me. This is super exciting to be here. Yeah.
Yay, we're excited.
But so I always feel that when I see it on stage, there's a lot more emphasis on the inequalities between Black and white people. Whereas in this movie, like Faye said, just the whole thing was really polished. So even when we go over to, like the Black part of town, I was like, well, this still looks kind of nice, but in reality, that's not what it was. And there was redlining and Tracy Turnblad got sent to detention because of her hair. And today kids who are Black still get suspended for their hair. So it's, there was a lot that they could have, it was 2007, so I'll give them that. But they could have, it was not about racism at all to me. They made it so digestible for the audience that then it just lost all of the importance that it had. So that was what I was gonna say.
I was about to say, Amanda, you said it was 2007, and I'm like, yeah, it was 2007. Like this show was set in the 60s when all of this was like, there. I feel like there is no excuse for trying to cut that away. There just isn't in 2007. There isn't. And like real quick, I don't enjoy the movie, but I do. There is one thing that I did appreciate. One, that's not true. There's more than one, but one big one. And that was that we got to see Negro Day, even for like a split second, that we actually got to see that in the movie, right? That I loved that because it also had a split second comment on the white people taking on songs written by Black people, right? Because they transition with New Girl in Town from the white kids to the Black kids, and Velma calls her out and says, "How could you choose that song?" And she's like, "They wrote it." So it takes a second to touch on that, which I appreciated. And yes, so I didn't want to completely poo-poo.
I would like to going off of that. The choreography that I see in the movie has yet to be seen on stage for me. And what I mean by that is the embodiment of our culture. And truly seeing what it was, the freedom of the music, the freedom of the movement without apologizing, and that's what was intimidating for me, I think, to a lot of white people back in the day, because we can move the way that they could move. And I miss that element from the stage production. I have yet to see a production. I mean, Broadway was close. It was very, very close. But in any regional production, I have yet to see the embodiment of the culture, because for me, the movement speaks volumes, because it's expression, it's anger, it's rebellion. And like when I did Memphis, it's just like Tear Down the House, for example, was a protest against us dancing like these people and doing all this stuff, and we completely let go, and we just went off. And I feel like that's the whole reason they like them on television, because they're entertaining, that people like to watch. And just going into that, and that's one thing I do appreciate about the film version versus the stage version. But New Girls in Town is everything. I can watch 3 Black girls do everything all day. That's another story.
What about when we've talked about these movie musicals? It's been great because we've done Hair and The Music Man and all that, and they all focus around a specific time period, a decade. And here this puts us in the 60s, and we're talking about how that helps in the difference with the movie and the things then, but are still an issue now, and the nostalgia of the 60s, and maybe the TV show is one of those elements. But does anyone else want to kind of go down that hole and talk about the period?
Oh, I love the period, because that was that's when on Saturday you stayed home to watch dance shows. I remember all the way through the 70s. That was the greatest thing about getting up on Saturday morning, besides having to clean the house. I didn't want to do that. But I knew that if I got up early enough, cleaned the house, I was ready for Bandstand. I was ready for Soul Train. I could watch it all. I was ready for every dance show. And I learned all of my dances from watching television. Mm-hmm. Because that's where you found out what the new hit was, what the new, 45 was, what the new dance was that you could practice in your house. You'd be like, I can do the boogaloo. Oh. And then you were at a party and you were like, I can do the boogaloo. Can you do the boogaloo? And we would do it. So I miss that about our culture now, that we don't have anything to look to, or even teenagers to look to, that conform us and make us this united group. Because when we would watch a Bandstand or Soul Train, everybody knew how to do the Soul Train line. All you had to do is turn television. It didn't matter what color you were. you know, you were doing it in your house anyway. And it kind of connected us in a way that we don't have those connections. It's like cartoons. It's like anything of the 60s. That was a great fun about the 60s. You had the Flintstones and you had all these great cartoons that were the Jetsons that just made you laugh and it made you light. And those kinds of things about the 60s with all of the turmoil that was going on around us. And there were lots of stuff going on. Civil rights, you know, was going on, everything that was going on. But it was great to know that on Saturdays, you had something to look forward to. Cartoons, Bandstand, Soul Train.
And the Buddy Dean show, which is what Hairspray was based on, the Buddy Dean show in Baltimore, was a 2-hour event like after school. You know, you came home and you were sitting in front of that television for 2 hours learning those dances. And, you know, as the kids say today, standing their favorite Deaners.
Right. And you know what? And at that time, every major city in the country had one of those dance shows in every major city that we all ran home to watch. I know we had one in Chicago. They had them in Philadelphia. They had them everywhere. But everybody ran home. It was kind of the way to ensure that you would get home on time. Your parents knew you were coming home because you wanted to watch that dance show.
Nothing specific about the time period because obviously I wasn't there. But I remember the second time I saw it, when the national tour finally got to Appleton, Wisconsin, was that I took my mom. And for anyone who hasn't seen the original Broadway production, there's this great image. The very first thing you see is all these dancers in these different silhouettes. And my mom immediately teared up because it reminded her so much of her childhood. And one of the biggest gifts the show ever gave me, I'm going to cry about it. And she's alive. My mom is totally fine. She's alive and well and living in North Carolina. Was that like afterwards it brought up so many memories for her. And she told me all these stories about my mom as a teenager that I had never heard before. And there was something about the show that just reminded her of all these things that she grew up with. And that, speaking of the period, was just like, she felt like they got so much of the details about the period right. And it moved her and it inspired her to share a lot of her childhood with me. And for that reason alone, I will always be so thankful to this show because it was just something that was really special to my mom and me. And to this day, it's one of her favorite shows.
I always liked Timeless to me because it was the 5 minutes in the whole show that I got to have a break. And I mean, you know, the people who played my parents in the different productions were always so beautiful. Here at Drury Lane, it was Michael Lindner and Tim Kazurinsky. And in my other productions, D. Scott Withers, Deion Johnson, and oh my gosh, his name escaped my brain. I forgot my other dad. But you know, it's such a beautiful moment of two people just loving each other. You know, and I loved that connection, but also 5 minutes to get some water and have it all to myself.
This film is filled with you know, so many recognizable names and stars. What about each of their performances? And we've touched on a few of them, but looking back at the cast in this movie, what are people's thoughts on that? Frankie?
I think we all know what everyone has said about Travolta. It's Travolta's always going to be that weird dichotomy, especially with his own politics and religion. That it, you know, and he's been on record as saying that he needed something as big as Danny Zuko to go back to the musical world, and we all said why. You know, but just the role that always is like the crux of Hairspray working is Tracy. You know what I mean? And I would give my left hand to have seen Lillian and Faye do it. But, you know, it's just like they nail that casting down because they need someone fresh-faced or something like that. And they've always, like, kept that tradition. And I wish they would have kept the tradition of a queer artist playing Edna. You know, that's a queer artist that makes you fall in love with Edna. And Zac Efron, for what it's worth, is, again, it's one of those examples of like, he did his exact job. He's the glossy teen idol, and it was never more of a perfect fit, but knew you were watching Zac Efron be Zac Efron. But boy, did it work, because if there's ever a character that it's just like you could plunk any teen idol into that, and boy, are they successful in it. Zac Efron nailed that track.
I agree.
Yeah, Bill?
I would say, Frankie, as opposed to, I'm not sure a queer artist doing Edna as important as someone who can believably get the point of. I would have loved to see Christopher Walken play Edna. He could have made it. You know, it needs to be someone that there's an. I always felt like John Travolta was like channeling his inner, his inner diminutive, prissy self or whatever. It wasn't about. I found his portrayal more, in some ways, more offensive and disappointing than Harvey or Divine. I want to see someone who could take it head on and do it strong, but always keep that, go down to the baritone or the bass when necessary.
I'll give you that point.
For the character.
Yeah, I just queer out of tradition, I suppose. And I can't think of the other word, and so it may not be correct. Is that Divine's Edna was not afraid to be ugly.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And even Harvey's, there's some ugly moments, and like that's the reality, is that we never see an ugly Edna moment in the 2007 version.
Even when it comes to the protest, she doesn't join the protest willingly. She's looking for Tracy in the movie and like gets roped into it, Mm-hmm. And I was just like, why?
Yeah. I was going to add something too with the John Travolta versus Divine versus Harvey Fierstein. I think that they really just were more encapsulating who Edna was, because I remember when the movie came out, there were all these interviews where John Travolta, all he could talk about was, I really tried hard with the Baltimore accent. And it's like one of those things where you're like, well, no one's going to know that you had a Baltimore accent. You weren't like, no pun intended, but embodying who Edna was. And I think Divine, with her history, and Harvey Fierstein with his history, it's one of those things that they could bring to this role of this woman who is waiting to blossom and is also afraid for her daughter. And it's just all like, there's so many things that she's frightened of. And, for John Travolta, it was like, I could have a Baltimore accent.
Yeah, I just want to say I love Allison Janney, who played Penny's mom. Is that
yes?
Yes.
Penny's mom.
Not Velma.
I just love
Prudy Pingleton.
Yes. I just think she's a phenomenal actress and can really, like with even one line, you just feel like you know her whole character. Like, I think it was at some point in the beginning, Amanda Bynes was like, Penny was like I'll have nothing if I don't have this TV show. And she said, nothing builds character. And, that's such an absurd line, but like, I believed it. So I don't know. I just could see her playing any part and I would love it, I think. Yeah, she's great.
So we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but if we were to recast this or, Chris, do you want to jump in first?
Oh, sorry. Just two people we haven't mentioned. Number one, the breakout discovery of the film, Elijah Kelly.
Yes.
I would watch him do anything ever. I know he had a brief recording career. He was in The Wiz Live. I just thought he has everything that you ever want in a seaweed and then some. You know what I mean? His voice, his moves, his personality. I just fell completely in love with him. He has yet to answer my marriage proposal, but like, okay. I got lost now. And actually, the other big disappointment for me, this is maybe an unpopular opinion other than John Travolta, was Queen Latifah. She just felt very low energy to me through the whole movie. And then the fact that she sang I Know Where I've Been like an octave down or whatever it was, just sort of like took all the energy out of it. And
now that's a low song to begin with, so you don't need to lower it.
Y'all, I did it with Felicia Fields. She took that thing down to the basement and it still rocked me, okay? So I feel like it's not about the key, it's about delivery, because Felicia, I remember she would hold on to my arm and I could feel the electricity shooting through my body. And she was doing that thing in the basement. So
Going back to what Ife said earlier, time with your cast. It was very clear that she just walked on the set and she ain't know none of those children there. And it's just like, she didn't know the people around her. She didn't have anybody to reach out to. She didn't have a line to say, like, I know that's you, sit your ass down. She didn't have that moment to connect with the people around her. And I think that had a lot to do with it.
I agree. Absolutely.
I have a question. Oh, sorry, Ife, go ahead.
No, go for the question, baby.
I have a question. Was she too young?
I get why you would say that. I don't think that it was too young. I think she wasn't invested. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. I don't think I'm with Chris. She showed up on the set and she did her job. And because she brings the box office money in, and I'm not mad about any of that, that's what she did. And I mean, that's what she was hired to do. But I don't think she invested in who Maybelle is. That's a mother instinct. I don't care if it's a cat or a cow. You have to have some kind of mother instinct to do Maybelle. You have to, you have to bring that up. That has to be genuine. You can't sing a song like that just because they gave you some sheet music and said, this is your part, go. You have to invest in that. And that was what my feeling was, is that it was kind of like, okay, this is the number you want me to do. You paid me enough. I'm going to come and I'm going to do it. And it's going to be cool. And y'all going to like me because I'm Queen Latifah. Again, I never saw Maybelle. I just saw Queen Latifah doing Hairspray.
I kind of wish that they would have done what they did with Nikki, which is invest and with Elijah, go with people who are not known to.
Sometimes it's best
to audiences. Turn them like yes. The box office names are going to be a draw. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe just do one, and then the rest of them make them these new, fresh people. Go to these theater actors who are performing this show. Take those people because those are the people that have invested the time and passion and to this material.
Yeah, because if you're going to play a mama role, and it truly is, there's no doubt about that. The role was crafted for exactly what it was to do. You have to take on that responsibility. And if you don't want to be the mother of the den, then don't take. My feeling is don't take on that role if that's not something you want to do. But you can't gloss that over. Mama is mama. If you call her Motormouth, if you call her whatever you want to call her, that's mama. That's who you go to for your comfort, for your heart. And all the kids went to her. She's the mother on the block that you can always go to her house when your parents don't listen to you. You know what I mean? She's cool. She'll give you a sandwich, but she's not going to let you go wrong either. She's going to make sure you're doing the right thing. That's what she is. You can talk to her. She's hip. She's cool, but she'll snatch you in the back of your head too.
And for those that don't know, they did that with the role of Tracy, brought in someone new for this because Nikki was part of a huge general audition pool and was 17, 18. There's a whole story about her working at Cold Stone, having this be her dream role, and she got it. And there's a handful of articles and some clips of video about that. We have a few minutes left, so we always like to try and end with the question of, who would you cast? So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you were the casting director and putting together this film now, who would you want to see in it? Frankie?
I just highly recommend that everyone check out the Hairspray live that happened a couple years ago, just because it went back to stage actors and whatnot, and it is by no means a perfect iteration of that. The live musicals are their own beasts and whatnot, but I just think if we went back to, we haven't touched on the Von Tussles a lot because they're an interesting part of the Hairspray realm, is that they're villains who don't actually incite villainous change. They're just a lens of racism, which is fascinating. And I thought Chenoweth and Dove Cameron, I would see them do that in a revival. I just thought they nailed every part of it down to it. And most of that cast was pretty brilliant, except Ariana Grande, excuse me. But I'm sorry, allergy season. And
somebody throwing stuff.
But my first two picks in a new version of this would be Chenoweth and Dove Cameron.
I would love to see with the magnification of drag culture in pop right now. I would love to see a drag artist, not an actor who is doing drag, but a drag artist in the tradition of Divine back in Edna. So, you're looking at a Delta Work, you're looking at what is her name? Her name just escaped my brain. No, I can't think of her name. Okay, anyway, you see what I'm saying? I would think it would be interesting to do that. I wonder what putting a trans woman in that role would do. I wonder what that would do. How does that change the feel of her? How does it, I would be interested in looking at that. As far as casting, honestly, do you know what I really, really wish I saw more of? Is a production team that is led by Black people. I feel like this show is put on so often and run by white people, and it doesn't give the little time that they give to the Black scenes, don't get the weight and the honesty and the diligence that they deserve because they don't have any concept of the struggle. So if I had to choose casting, I would love to cast a production team, direction and choreography and design, and that is all Black. Period.
If I do one more step touching, run and tell that we're gonna step touching for real.
Shut up.
I have no recommendations for casting, but a question about casting. Is it important that Edna be a man in drag? And if so, why is it important? Why is that so critical to bring about the point of the show?
I don't know if it has to be that way. I'm just thinking off the top of my head that maybe John wanted to make some inroads to knowing that love is love. People are people, and it shouldn't matter that when you pull the curtain back, it's still people, it's still love, and love who you love. I think that's the whole message of the piece. Black, white, transgender, gay, straight, whatever it is, just love who you love. As long as you're loving and not hating. That's, big, small, tiny, long, short. I just think that's the message in it. So I don't know if that really makes a difference, but I think that might have been where he was going with that, because it's a diverse cast in that way.
I think I'm squarely in the camp of it does make a difference. I think that there is an otherness that general public psychologically sees when they see a man in a dress. I mean, maybe not so much now, it's becoming much more mainstream, but even then, I feel like I wouldn't want to lose another kernel of the otherness. You know what I mean? That people see when they see that show, and that other doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it matters.
We'll go to James and then down to Amanda.
I was just thinking, ultimately this is written by John Waters. So who's very much a person who has a lot of subversive ideas and a lot of craziness about him. And part of me thinks that one of the ideas of having Edna be a man dressed as a woman is almost a tribute to Divine. So it forces all of these kids who are going to see the movie for the first time, hopefully because of the Google world we live in, will do research and all of a sudden find out who this person named Divine was. So for John Waters, it's him paying homage to this huge person in his life and who he feels should go on and more people need to learn about. So I think it could be a subversive way of John Waters working Divine into middle America and into those small high schools that kids are going to do the show. All of a sudden we're going to have to look up and be like, wow, this is Divine, or wow, this is John Waters, and he did a lot of crazy things.
Yeah, to go off of what Lillian was saying, I actually wonder what could be gained if it was a woman playing Edna, because of just what plus size women go through in this society, and specifically the women who are plus size go through, and what it's like for a mother to have a daughter who's also plus size, and what weight would that bring. But I would love to see RuPaul play Motormouth.
Oh, good.
Interesting.
All right, we're going to go to Chris, and then we'll start wrapping it up here.
I was just going to say in this conversation, I agree with Lillian's gut that there's something important about having a woman or a trans woman in the piece. My thought is, what if we switch it up? What if Edna is played by a cis woman and Billy Porter plays Motormouth?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my heart just skipped a beat.
If anyone watching this conversation hasn't watched Pose yet, both seasons are now on Netflix. If you don't know who Billy Porter is, do yourself a favor.
All right, and with that, we're going to wrap up this wonderful conversation. As the theme of today seems to be love is love. Thank you all for participating, and I'm going to pass it back over to our artistic director, Michael Weber.
We hope you enjoyed this Movie Musical Monday podcast and that you'll join us live to participate in our next discussion. You'll find information about upcoming events on our website and how you can join in the conversation. Theaters across the country need your support now, more than ever. We hope you'll consider a donation to Porchlight Music Theater today. Just go to porchlightmusictheater.org. Until next time on Movie Musical Mondays, I'm Michael Weber.